What's up, guys? It's Josh back with SobrietyWoD. Last week we kind of ran through just a breakdown of the Great Pyramids. We talked about the structure of building a fit lifestyle, and then we also talked about that Maslow's hierarchy of psychological needs, and it's just neat to see how things progress on top of each other. Now, the base of the pyramid for fitness that we talked about last week is nutrition, and it's kind of a topic that not a lot of people like to discuss. But nutrition for me was really closely linked to sobriety in a couple ways, and here, this is some of the ways that there's actually a lot of similarities. These are a couple that I wanted to just look at briefly. So the first one is that what we put in our bodies affects us dramatically, right? And we know through experience with our addiction that when we put something in our bodies, it tended to change the way we performed or the way we acted. It's no different with nutrition. And so that was one similarity I noticed kind of way back at the beginning. The next one is that some foods are easier to just avoid altogether than to moderate. And people have this experience, but we just have this experience more directly with having addictive substances, knowing that it's a lot easier to just avoid certain things than it is to actually start taking them or start consuming them and then to just stop. Typically, we're more drastically affected by that whole idea of once we start, we can't stop. The third thing that I want to talk about is that the further a food is from its natural form, the more dangerous it is. And this is when we get into things like processed foods. So, I always think about it with like drugs and alcohol, like they really aren't for the most part available in their natural state. Like there has to be something done to it to make it what it becomes. Pretty much any pill is created in a laboratory. There's not a lot of substances that you can just grab and eat, and they're gonna affect us the way that drugs do. And food is no different. Grain is a good example. If you just picked some wheat and ate some wheat, it wouldn't do to you what flour does to you once it's been pulverized and processed and put through these different things that actually make it work different, make it function different in us. So that's another similarity that can help us kind of think in terms of good choices and bad choices. And another one is that most of the foods that are engineered actually have addictive qualities to them. So food is specifically designed, and this shit will piss you off, like if you actually study the food industry and you look at some of those documentaries on Netflix and stuff, to realize that these foods are actually engineered to cause addiction or to cause even physical dependence. And so there's a lot of times where trying to transition off of certain foods, there's almost like a detox period. And so these are just some fundamental tie-ins between something that we are very familiar with and something that we might be just learning about. So for the discussion, I want you guys to just think through these things, talk about how did your addiction itself affect your performance. So that's one thing to think about. I was severely limited on my capabilities as a human being by the fact that I was consistently inebriated, So it shouldn't be too hard to see some correlation there. Also, discuss your attempts at moderation. Did you ever try to control your use? I have story after story of how I was telling them last week how I had actually handcuffed myself to some furniture at some point, trying to keep myself from doing too much. And so pretty familiar with some failed attempts at moderation. And then also, what were the results of your attempts at moderation? Most of us realized that there was no freedom until we let go absolutely, that there was no hope of moderation. There was no hope of limiting our use or using like normal people. So you guys have fun with that discussion. Think about those tie-ins, then we'll come back and talk about the actual CrossFit prescription for nutrition.